Oh, okay. All right.
No more
Well,
testing.
We were messing with the phone and
Right.
we ran out of time. So I guess this is the way it is. Is it crooked? I can't tell. Anyway,
I think it's fine.
welcome to Coffee with Pastor Justin. Although today we're drinking tea. And I was actually contemplating what happens when we move into warmer weather in spring and summer. Will it have to be Cokes with Pastor Justin or just caffeine of any kind with Pastor Justin? Or how do we want to...
I don't know.
No, okay. Well, these are the things that I ponder. We have to think about that ahead of time.
Iced tea.
But anyway, iced tea with Pastor.
Hopefully we'll be in person.
Yeah. Oh, crap, that would be nice, wouldn't
I'm
it?
pondering other things.
Yeah, that's true. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us, and praise the Lord for this opportunity to just get together, even though it is over live stream, just to get to have a little additional opportunity for fellowship and thinking and praying together about different things going on in the church. So with that, we have been spending the first part of this Coffee with Pastor Justin time as sort of news-ish kinds of things. And of course, today, in today's message, there were several pieces of that we can kind of go back over and just kind of think through a little more thoroughly. One of them is the new website and logo, which actually is not new to you guys, because we've actually mentioned it a couple of times in the Q&A or coffee time, because you guys are special. Don't tell anybody we said that, but you guys are special. So it's not new to you. We've mentioned it before, but I think it is worth touching on again. That I think it's important as a church in this day and age. It's kind of like, just keeping up the landscaping in front of your building, or making sure that the painting isn't peeling off, to keep up a new and up-to-date website. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to have a website that is clear, crisp, giving information that really a website's main purpose is not internal communication, it's mainly external communication. So it's communicating with the with new people or visitors, or if people are thinking about visiting your church. Who are you? What are you about? So we're trying to really organize the website in a way that makes it very easy for a new person to navigate. And I'm excited about that. I think it's going to look really nice. Appreciate the team of folks, qualified folks from our church that have been working on that. And along with that, a new logo, which someone asked me why a new logo, and that's a good question. For one thing, styles change, fonts change, colors change. Actually, I did not have this in mind last year at the Vision Sunday, but remember I used the example of, is there a color that you would absolutely hate to see in the building? And I kind of jokingly said, like 80s turquoise kind of thing. And then someone immediately showed me afterwards a picture of our church with, back in the 80s with 80s turquoise everywhere, which of course, everybody did, right?
I have turquoise eyeshadow.
Right, exactly. But as we all know, colors go in and out of style, fonts go in and out of style, those, just things that were pleasant to the eye of the beholder become unpleasant or out of place. And so likewise, the logo that we've had has been a blessing, but several things about it. One is the name of the church is actually, so the logo was designed before social media. And so the name of the church is in the logo. And so therefore, when you're trying to shrink it down for a Facebook profile picture or whatever, it gets tiny, and the words, you're not supposed to have words shrunk down that size. So just separating the logo from the words is one thing. And then also, just updating it also to make it more modern and, more up-to-date colors and all those kind of things. Although when you see the logo, and I think you'll love it, you'll see that I love the fact that the designer actually pulled out elements from our current logo. So it's not brand new in the sense of you won't recognize it. You'll be like, oh, that's our old logo updated. And I think it'll be very, I think it's very pleasing and yet also exciting and modern. So that's a blessing. And God has particularly blessed us as a church because we were able to find a logo designer who's a Christian, who actually has done work for big international mission ministries like Gospel Coalition and those kind of large international ministries, but has a heart for the local church, and so gave us a very reasonable rate on a logo and rebranding design. And now we're working with a Canadian Christian company to design the website. And again, a good, a good affordable, thankfully, price, which is always helpful. So So anyway, I'm excited about that. I think it'll be, it's the kind of same thing as just spring cleaning, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example where you come in and you feel like, oh yeah, okay, we're it's been tough with COVID and all these things, but it's kind of an opportunity to say, yeah, okay, we're heading into this new year with intentionality and a fresh outlook, and we trust that God is going to do marvelous things in our midst. And the hopefully the website and logo they don't make that happen, but they do reflect that that's the direction that we are prayerfully heading. So
yes, we have a comment.
Yeah.
Sweet tea.
Oh, somebody from down south apparently.
I don't think so.
I agree with the sweet tea. Hey, that's right. And maybe not as sweet as they drink down south, where it's kind of like sugar tea.
With a little bit of tea.
But yeah, iced tea. I love iced tea. Or iced coffee, actually, come to think of it. So it could be iced coffee or iced tea with
maybe
pastures.
We could just leave it.
That's a really long name, too, though. So, yeah.
All right, next.
Let's see. Next thing. So got to share today. I've been looking forward to getting to just talk through this with the congregation a little bit, but got to share today about the opportunity for, Lord willing, we'll be posting a new position soon, a pastoral position at the church for, we're calling it may seem kind of clunky as a name, but it's kind of, it's very intentional as far as the goal of it, and that is pastor for communication and mobilization. So communication, it's not just our church, any large church. That's kind of your Achilles heel. It's a real difficult thing because you've got people over here who've been in the church maybe for 50 years. You've got people over here who are brand new. You've got people, of course, in our church. Thank God, you also have different cultures. You have different. You have all kinds of different things going on, dynamics. And trying to communicate across all those different ways is not easy. Yeah. And so someone whose gifting and desires is toward using communication for the glory of God and the furthering of His kingdom, so that we are therefore able to know what each other are doing, know what's going on in the church. It's not different missions, it's not different goals, it's one goal that we have as a church, although we may all have different giftings within that goal, of course, like many members in the one body. But we have one mission, and we're all pursuing it together because we're communicating well across the board, and then mobilized, therefore, to reach out to the world in an effective way. So internally communicating better, and so therefore externally communicating better, mobilizing better for outreach. And so I'm praying that that'll be a real blessing, because it's been a challenge to. And of course, COVID has highlighted many of these things. Even if it was on our radar beforehand, it certainly has highlighted and exacerbated the problem, in the sense that now you have 800 people, and the majority of the 800 have not been in the building since March of last year. It was March. And so the majority of people have not been in the building for what is now a year. And so we desperately need to communicate well. So someone whose native language is social media will be part of it, but also just who desires to use comms, use communication to get across barriers. Together. Yeah, bring people together, get across barriers, not even necessarily cultural barriers, just barriers to communication. And not be thinking, the intentionality again of not thinking in a silo, but just thinking across the board. Okay, what's happening over here? Let's make sure that these people over here know about it. Yeah. And so hopefully that'll be a real blessing. We're intentionally making it a pastoral position, though, because we're not just talking about somebody who's has a degree in communications. We're talking about somebody who is going to utilize the gospel to motivate our church and shepherd our church toward greater usefulness, and that's the goal. So it's a shepherding pastoral position, which I'm thankful for and excited about. So
I'm excited about it.
yeah. Let's see. And then the other thing, it seemed like there's something else still.
Yeah, I made some notes here. Vision Sunday.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, and Vision Sunday, of course, is March 28th. And just to reiterate, and in case you missed it in the announcement today from Pastor Scott, just as normal, the week before AGM, our Vision Sunday and annual general meeting, we throw that out as if everybody knows what it means, but annual, I think that's right, I think that's what it stands for. Annual general meeting, which is sort of our one big business conference of the year. Vision Sunday and AGM will be on the same Sunday, March 28th, together. But as normal, the week before that will be a Q&A opportunity for people to just ask questions, and particularly we'll have already by that point out a copy of the annual report and upcoming budget, and so people have an opportunity to look that over, ask questions, whatever. Sadly, all this has to be virtual because we can't get together, but we will, Lord willing, have a Q&A, like a Vision Sunday AGM Q&A the week before the AGM and Vision Sunday. So that gives you an opportunity to just ask questions, whatever. So, let's see. Was there something else about Vision Sunday? Oh,
the elders.
I wanted to make that really clear that, because this is clearly a challenging AGM. In fact, that's why we're having to move it back to March 28th. Normally it'd be sort of the first part of March, but trying to get the logistics together of a quorum that's registered online, that can vote online, and you're making sure that all those pieces are in place legally, like how Ontario wants us to be able to have a voted on budget, for instance, for the coming year. It's something to pray for, genuinely. So I appreciate the team of folks who's working on that.
I know the staff has been
working
late hours.
The office staff's been working on it. Pastor Dennis has been overseeing it and organizing it. So, I'm thankful for that. But I'm thankful it can do it. But it does come with some challenges, and so just with that in mind, the AGM, what we're going to be voting on is just the very straightforward nuts and bolts, like what do we need to get done in order to keep heading into the year, like of course the government even requires an approved budget and that kind of stuff. So in fact, we're actually working on a budget. We're working from that budget now. We have to, because we're already into the year. But what is the budget for the year? Now it's approved, now we can move forward, that kind of thing. But as far as the eldership restructuring, as I mentioned in the sermon last Sunday, that we intend to sort of make some of those transitions, roll out some of those elements of it toward the fall. But also in the meantime, of course, we'll be having conversations about that as a church. We'll have opportunity to vote, Lord willing, in person, and to make the necessary changes in the Constitution for that kind of leadership change. And that's not something we're going to be surprising anybody with or trying to do all of a sudden. It's the kind of thing we want feedback from the congregation on, as well as we want to have some laser point kind of focused suggestions and leadership to provide the church in relation to that, so that we're not just brainstorming without a purpose or intentionality. So we've got a goal in mind with eldership, and we'll be discussing it, we'll be voting on it, we'll be rolling that out, and that's later in the year. That's not anything we're trying to deal with at the AGM. I think there might have been some confusion over that. So is that it? I don't know. There's a lot of news this time, so I don't mind sharing, spending a little time on that.
Questions, maybe?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, please. If you have any questions about any of that, feel free to let us know. I usually mention at the beginning, Facebook is actually right now it's the only way to do it, because if you send it to me, because no one sent me an email before we started this, my phone is actually how we're doing the video today, so I can't check the email while we're doing it. But
we should just fix it so I can get it on my laptop.
It's definitely fixable. We just haven't fixed it.
Or I can use your laptop.
Oh, that's even
that
easier.
would fix everything.
Yeah, that's a piece of cake. Okay. So next time we'll do the very complicated fix of changing laptops.
Yeah.
And
Okay, we've got something here.
Okay, yes.
Okay, is the blind man a specific example in the text, or does special needs like autism spectrum, with its very challenging cognitive realities, included in the theological blanket statement to glorify God?
Oh, thank you for asking that.
I know, I love these questions.
Yes, amen. Of course, by the way, if you weren't able to watch the message yet, that's referring to a text today for today's message on we must as a church. As we're concluding the sermon series, what we must be as a church, and today thinking about we must love others who are not Christians yet, who don't know the Lord yet. And the text was just there in John chapter 9, where Jesus and the disciples are coming across a blind man who's, a beggar and helpless, and the disciples ask him, ask Jesus, who sinned, this man? Or it's like have you still what's the classic gotcha question, like do you still beat your wife, or something like that. Yes or no, do you still beat your wife? Oh, yes, no, either way it doesn't sound right. Well, similarly, who sinned, this man or his parents? It's like, well, Jesus says no, no to any of those, that neither of those are accurate. What did happen is this man, for God's glory, was born into the world with his weaknesses and challenges and so on, but also with the dignity of being an image bearer of God, so that God would be glorified and then Jesus heals him, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a great question. Is that just that one blind man, just a random example, but it's not true across the board? Or does the Bible actually provide a principle by which we can say that's true of every special needs, actually every sorrow, every grief, every weakness? It's not just
small
disabilities. Yeah, it's not just disabilities. It's losing your spouse. It's just loss, pain, all these things. And the Bible beautifully, totally contrary to how we feel often, and contrary to the meaninglessness of a world that's just random atoms bumping into each other, if that's the way we viewed the world. No, the New Testament over and over and over again affirms to us, God, in Old and New Testament, affirms to us over and over again that our trials are infused with purpose, that all things are working together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. As God told Paul, in your weakness I show my strength.
I love all those verses.
And so it just goes on and on. It's a beautiful reality that God is. I've been reading in Isaiah in my personal Bible reading, and God is saying through the prophet Isaiah, "You messed up. You've rebelled against me. You've been a rebellious people." It goes on, and I'm going to have mercy on you and show my glory. It's just amazing. God is merciful beyond our wildest dreams. And he's gracious and beyond our wildest dreams. But what that means is not this false prosperity gospel that goes around a lot of times, which is, I love you, so I'm going to give you an easy life.
Right.
That's not how God shows his love. The blind man is a wonderful example. In John chapter 9, God shows his love by allowing us to take part in the one purpose in all the world that matters, and that is glorifying God. And in our blindness, in our limitations, in our failures, God allows us to take part in glorifying him. So thank you for that question, because it's a beautiful answer that we get to give from Scripture.
Yeah, so. And a beautiful testimony, I think, to the unbelieving world, particularly with special needs children, and how we view them as gifts, and because a lot of people don't. And so
the aged, Alzheimer's, right now, sadly, there's we've talked quite a bit. I've referenced in the pulpit several times Bill C6, that is an LGBTQ conversion therapy ban, but actually in the actual language of it is not just conversion therapy, but is just Christian view of marriage ban. But Bill C7 is a bill that is really going to make euthanasia much, much easier, much It's going to broaden it significantly. And where does that come from? It comes from an understanding of a utilitarian human worldview. That is, if people aren't useful, then why have them here? Or if you're not having fun right now, if you're sick, if you have a chronic illness, if you're in constant pain, well, then there's no reason to be here. Just let's end this thing. But if we see that we are made in the image of God, C.S. Lewis put it this way: you have never met a mere mortal. In other words, every single human being is made to live forever. They will live forever in hell, or they will live forever in heaven. But they are made to last forever. And so you've never met a mere mortal. Every single human being is an image bearer of God, and they will last forever. And so therefore it is no small thing to devalue a person just because of their special needs, or because they're aged, or they have Alzheimer's, or whatever. They are still valuable. And they still have, and see, you could look at that blind person and say, he's blind from birth. What good is he to society? God says, he's good to me. He's valuable to me. He infuses our life with meaning. And so the person who is suffering, the person who is limited, the person with Down syndrome, it doesn't matter who they are. God values them, and he has their life. He has them here for a reason. And we dare not snuff that out and take that lightly.
And he shows himself in weakness.
That's right. Well, and he shows. I thought you were going to say, and he shows himself strong on behalf of the weak. So,
isn't that true? Yeah.
This is Isaiah again. Yeah, father to the fatherless, husband to the widows. He says to Israel, he said, you have not been taking up for the poor. You have been, you've been actually making yourself rich off of the poor people. And he said, I will take up for the poor. Yeah. So God will take up for those who whether we think they're important or not, yeah. God does think they're important. Great question.
There's
Thank you so
another
much.
question that is related to this one. Many people use Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in your womb, I knew you, to indicate God created us personally, even with our physical disabilities. How do we reconcile this verse with the blind man born as a result of a fallen world of sin affecting our DNA?
Great question.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, good.
No, I got carried away. Go ahead.
Good, you're not
I
carried away.
want you to answer it.
I want you to answer, and then I'll answer.
Last time I talked.
What if we do this for the next 30 minutes? Back and forth like this.
Okay, so go.
If you have a thought, I want you to share.
I will if you don't.
Okay, all right, that's kind of, I'm not sure how to take that. So if you start speaking after this, that means my answer's not been good? Is that what you... Okay, sorry. That's such a good question. It deserves a better answer than our going back and forth like that. Yeah. The question is a great question. If the Bible speaks, and it does, in the Psalms, it talks about how I've knit you together in your mother's womb, and the passage that was just quoted as well. The Bible does make it clear that every individual human being is valued, is made by God, is crafted by God. Our times are in His hands. Over and over again, I am the one who formed you. Over and over again, from Old Testament, New Testament, it is affirmed that our lives are not accidental. Mm-hmm. That God, each individual, just like He calls the stars by name, right? He calls each individual by name. While that is true, that doesn't, and this is why this is such a good question. It's important that we not accidentally imply from that God is making broken things. God made the world good, and it was in fact perfectly good, and God could look over all of His creation, and there was no pain, there was nothing out of place, and He said it is very good. But Satan tempted Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve gave in to the temptation. By one man's sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for all have sinned. And so now the whole world is broken and touched, and much more than touched, bent by the influence of sin. And so God is continuing to sovereignly work out His purposes in every generation, constantly, by necessity, given the reality of the sinful world, by necessity, always using broken things to do that. That's what's so impressive about it. is that he's not creating broken things, but he is taking broken people, broken situations, broken pasts, broken futures. He's taken broken things and he's using those things to accomplish his perfect purposes. So you have a perfect world and it gets broken and you think, oh, now how can God do perfect things without a perfect world? He says, oh, that's, I was just thinking, he's not just King of Kings, Lord of Lords, he's chess master of chess masters. Like he's not limited by where the pieces are or anything else. He can move in such a way. If we just spend a moment thinking about this, it's mind-boggling that all things, not just this thing, that thing, all things are working together for good to those who love God. And so he's talking there about broken things, such that he goes on to say in Romans chapter 8, where that passage comes from, he goes on to say, neither height nor depth nor life nor death. So broken things as well as good things, bad things as well as happy things. None of those things can separate you from the love of Christ. Yeah. So yes, God is forming each individual person. Is he forming is it accidental that a person ends up with Down syndrome? No. God.
And they're no more fallen than somebody without.
That's right. Every one of us are born into the world fallen, right?
Born into the world fallen.
That's exactly right.
It's not that one
more broken than the Down syndrome's person or the blind person's eyes is every person's heart.
Yes.
So we're all born into this world broken.
Yeah.
But God is making beautiful things out of the brokenness. He's overcoming sin, and he's overcoming. That's what's so beautiful about this passage, that talks about I am making all things new, because we need a full, total, absolute overhaul redemption, new heavens, new earth, and he's promising to do it. It's wonderful.
It's going to be...
Actually, you know what? That gets me to a sort of another thing that I was meant to mention too, and that is going to 1 Corinthians. We're coming to 1 Corinthians next time. And most, if you're a Bible reader or you've been through the 1 Corinthians before, you probably think of it accurately as one of the most messy passages. The church at Corinth is one of the most messy churches in the New Testament. The letter is addressing the most messy situations in the New Testament, speaking of brokenness and God making all things new. And yet, I was thinking about this on the way home today. It's just amazing. It's exactly how God brings about some of his most beautiful teaching, because there's so much error going on and wrong and sin going on in the church at Corinth. But when he addresses it in the letter, that's how we get some of the best teaching. So just one example is, because a heresy, an absolutely heretical teaching took root in Corinth, that Jesus wasn't coming back, we have 1 Corinthians 15, which is the most beautiful passage, I think, in all of Scripture on the resurrection. And so, and the second coming of Christ. And so, how did we get that? We got it because somebody was spreading false teaching and error, and Satan was getting into the church and wreaking havoc. But when Paul writes the 1 Corinthians, what happens? God uses this horrible wickedness to actually bring about a letter that would last for centuries and millennia, that would speak beautifully to the resurrection, the glorification, and the coming of Jesus Christ. And so we have this beautiful passage that we all love to quote, especially at funerals, about death, where is your sting? Grave, where is your victory? That comes from 1 Corinthians 15, because there was a heresy about death and the grave. And yet that's how God overrules it and brings glory out of it. So anyway, it's just I'm excited about 1 Corinthians. I hope you'll get excited about it as well. Be sure to read it in your private reading, because it always means more when you've been soaking in it as well. I think we'll study it together as a church. But 1 Corinthians, because of the motley crew of errors and challenges that is being faced, it's a neat letter to go through, because it just hits on just almost any topic you can imagine. So it's great for the local church. It's great for individuals. It's great for the future. It's great for the past. It's great for, it's just really a great comprehensive letter on a lot of things that we all care about. as Christians and as humans. So I'm excited about it.
Okay, one more.
Okay.
Okay. You hear a lot today about cutting toxic people out of your life because sometimes people can be negative for our emotional health.
That's a good question.
Is this sinful mentality and against what God asks of us? Does this just contribute to our, quote, love of ease?
That's a great question. I'm going to say, first of all, for sure no. And then I'm going to say, secondly, at times yes. So absolutely no, we should not be just cutting people off out of our life because they're toxic or they're hard to get along with or they bring us down or it's all different ways of basically as is well expressed in the question, different ways of being selfish and self-centered. Ironically, is get all the narcissistic people out of your life. Well, what's that? Being narcissistic. So it's absolutely we have to deal with broken people. That's what it means to love one another in the church. So you can't just get rid of toxic people. Which what does that mean, right? Anybody who's hard to get along with, someone who's criticizing you. You can't just get rid of people just because they aren't convenient. Ministering to people, forbearing people, that's what helps us be sanctified and helps other people see Jesus. So absolutely you can't just cut them off just because they're inconvenient or quote unquote toxic or whatever. On the other hand, I do want to be careful here because I know there are individual situations, individual situations where, for instance, an abusive, stalking husband, where it's wise to protect the children from the abusive, stalking husband. And so I would, but see, that's not just toxic. That's a lot
That's
more.
What I was going to say. Maybe you should define toxic. Because,
right, exactly.
I don't know if with some definitions of toxic, I wouldn't agree with your first answer. So.
Well, what do you mean? Go ahead.
I just think keep answering because you're in.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you mean by toxic. That's the real key, right? In other words, if toxic means mildly irritating or negative and you don't like to be around negative people, well then welcome to the broken world and you can't get away from those people and you shouldn't try. That's what we're here for, is to minister to those people. If by toxic you mean this may not be a word, but an unsalvageable situation where a person has so broken trust and so abused their position, for instance, in the family, like an abusive husband, abusive father, then it's wise and right to protect the children, for example, from an abusive father and make sure. And I'm not talking about abusive because the father didn't let them watch cartoons when they wanted to watch cartoons. I'm talking about actual abuse. Then in that situation, yes, of course, there are times when you do have to remove and protect some people from other people because it's just a dangerous and unhealthy situation. So, toxic is such a strong word that probably when it first was being used, it probably was, I haven't looked at the etymology or the connotation of that through the last few decades, but I'm guessing when it first came up, it probably was talking about abusive situations and that kind of thing. But now I know it's thrown around on social media all the time. For example, it's just anybody who says something you disagree with on Twitter, which is just ridiculous. So don't, those are not people we're supposed to be cutting off or not loving. There's this whole cancel culture, right, where you just, if they disagree with you, then you're no longer valuable. You get out of my life. That's. We're not supposed to surround ourselves with people who just agree with us. That's not the goal, or that we like, or that like us, or any of those things. We reach out to a hurting, broken world that's nothing like us, and we reach out to family members and church members who are nothing like us in some ways, because we love Jesus and because He loves them, and so we can't just selfishly cut them off. So that is such a good question that I feel like it required sort of both answers. And that is, depending on how toxic is, it kind of depends on how we would apply the lesson there.
And it doesn't always have to be extreme in that, like, you cut them off, like, cancel them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you distance, you know, it's important to surround yourself with good
sure, there's
Christians and those kinds of things. Because, you know, God's Word does say, I was just looking it up in Corinthians, don't be deceived, bad company ruins good morals. Like, if it's that kind of...
1 Corinthians, by the way, just sorry.
Yeah, I thought, well, maybe he'll get on that. But,
yes, exactly. You don't surround yourself with ungodly people and expect to stay godly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can come down to little things, like somebody that's always counting their blessing, or they have a heart of gratefulness compared to somebody who's always complaining. Those kinds of things do affect you, you know. So
who are your counselors? Who are your confidants? Who are your people that you admire, you look up to? Who are the friends you're surrounding yourself with?
You will become like those people.
Absolutely. But it doesn't mean you ever cut somebody off just
right.
because they're inconvenient or something.
I
Anyway,
just wanted to
I'm glad you
add that
did.
little bit in, because
very good.
I think we don't want to be on the other end of that and feel guilted, like, well, you know, I don't go for cancel culture, so I have to spend all my time with this person
Great point.
You know, is complaining, where I'm trying to, you want to be around somebody that's sharpening, that's like iron sharpening iron. You know, you want to be somebody that's edifying. You want to be pouring into somebody, and you want to be edified yourself, so that you can grow together in grace.
You know, and by the way, that just shows how good your question was, because it required 3 answers. So you can almost measure, I think, maybe that. No, I'm kidding. but it does actually. I mean, it's a good question, and so therefore, you know, it does require these kind of careful answers, because it is such a good question. You know, thank you. Well, that's it for today, and thanks so much for joining us, and may the Lord bless you and Morningstar Christian Fellowship in this coming week and weeks. I'm excited about this year, 2021. I actually loved 2020, just for the record. I feel like there's lots of sorrowful and tragic and difficult things about it, but God was gracious and faithful through 2020, and I'm excited to see what God will do in 2021 as well.
All right.
Bye.